Sure. Thank you, Brian. I'll quickly start with the introduction of mine. Hi, everyone. I'm Manish Sinha. I head OTT business at To The New. To The New is a technology services company, and we work as a technology partner to OTT customers, where we provide them with OTT platform development and system integration and engineering services across the OTT value chain. So I'll start with a very, very simple question about OTT, what it takes to launch an OTT. And if you talk about the first thing that comes to the mind and the most simple and the obvious one would be the content. So content would be the first piece. And if we go to the next level and we ask about what else is needed, we'll talk about the technology and operations. And this is where To The New comes in with its proven experience and expertise across the OTT value chain. So once our customer has the content, the rest of the things can be taken care of by To The New, and that will include all the technology and engineering services need through development, and finally the run and maintain as well for the operations. And how do we do it? We do it on the back of our OTT solution that we call as VideoReady. With VideoReady, we bring in the best of technologies and products to our customers. And we also ensure with VideoReady that we set the right foundation for our customers to be able to run a very, very robust and efficient information. To drill down into VideoReady comes with a very, very comprehensive content management system with advanced features around content editorial, metadata editorial, and a lot of device-specific customizations. It comes with a cloud-agnostic workflows and deployment capabilities, and it can run on public cloud, private cloud, hybrid model, and we already have customers who are deployed in each of these models. It's a completely cloud-agnostic solution. The third and very important aspect is that as a part of VideoReady, we have frameworks and accelerators that helps us build a cross-platform applications. And what I mean by cross-platform application is that more than 90% of the code base remains same across application, and that helps with consistent user experience across devices. And it also leads to significantly lower cost of development and maintenance of the applications, knowing that there are so many devices in the world now for OTT. Another important piece from an experience perspective is discovery. And we have a very advanced fandom model driven discovery engine that covers highly advanced search capabilities, personalization, and recommendation engine that comes as a part of VideoReady. And last but not the least, we understand that there are a lot of good products in the market who have already solved complexities within the value chain. And we don't believe in reinventing the wheel. And our VideoReady solution comes pre-integrated with some of the best products in the OTT industry in the area of, let's say, multi-DRM encoding, CD and data analytics, ad engines, subscriber management system. And it's a flexible solution. We let our customers bring in product of their choice, or they can go with what we already have as a part of VideoReady with a pre-integration. Finally, I'll just summarize what VideoReady is. It provides comprehensive content management system and a robust backend. It is completely cloud agnostic. We build cross-app platform application that helps with experience consistency across devices. We have a very, very advanced discovery engine. And finally, it comes pre-integrated with industry products. And with all this, what the customer gets, our customers, they will get a custom solution at the cost and pace of a white label solution. They will own the experience because it's a custom solution. We let them bring their own user experience that they have with another partner, or they can do it collaboratively with TTN. They own the roadmap and invest only on what is needed, because as a model, we do hand over the source code as well, overall source code, so that they can own their roadmap and they can decide, have flexibility to do it internally or with some other partners down the line. As I mentioned, they get cross-platform application that results in consistent experience across devices. It leads to significantly lower development and maintenance cost, and it works in a fast factory model where the features can be released much quicker because they use a common code base, and it reduces the time to market. And finally, last but not the least, we work with our customer as a partner with complete ownership. We provide them with end-to-end engineering services across the value chain. Everything related to technology we are capable of. We do managed services operation to take care of their infra and applications. And finally, We also provide them secure content operations. So you can see that we are kind of a one-stop shop for them for all their technology and operations need. This is what I had. And to know more, please log on to tothenew.com or please write to us at hello@tothenew.com.
This has actually been one of the core sessions we've had for 9 years now, is the user experience. It's something that is obviously, I think it's where the rubber hits the road between content and consumption and user behavior. And I think it's really fascinating because it is a combination of art and science. And we're going to talk about both. And I think you kind of look at this like baking a cake. There's a lot of ingredients that come into play. You have the tech stack and you have everything from encoders and players, and you can get quite technical with some of the different standards there. And then you kind of move up into the world of discovery and navigation and things like that. But ultimately, people still make the argument content is king. And if you have the right content, and Stefan's smiling now, people will overcome any obstacle, and the experience once they play their favorite show will trump any kind of awkwardness they had in getting there. So that's just a preamble for our session today. Let's do quick introductions. We'll start with left to right on my screen. Andrea.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Andrea Berry. I'm based in Los Angeles. I have traditionally worked in video technology on the sales side, and now I'm at an agency named Cakeworks, and we help businesses solve their video problems.
Awesome. Welcome. Thank you, Andrea. Manish.
Hi everyone, I am Manish Sinha and I head the OTT business at To The New. To The New is a technology services provider and we work as technology partner for our OTT customers. And we deliver to them OTT platform development, system integration, and other engineering services across the OTT value chain. Happy to be here and thank you, Brian, for having me here.
Thank you. Welcome. Virginia.
Hi, I'm Virginia Giuliano. I'm the founder of CobbleCord, which is a website and app that helps people cobble together personalized streaming bundles to get the most out of streaming using a patented, very simple process. Prior to launching CobbleCord, I was at Showtime Networks for 10 years doing subscriber acquisition and distribution partnerships, and led the go-to-market launch for their streaming services. Now, as the industry is evolving and becoming more complex, we are also trying to evolve a CobbleCord and step it further into a role of being the streaming consumer advocate that is needed now, by empowering people to take a more active role in their streaming mix and in managing it on an ongoing basis, and also to drive more consumer-friendly tools and practices within the industry.
Awesome. Welcome, Virginia. I love the branding. I love when branding is cool, but also descriptive, and you kind of immediately know what you get. So congrats on that. And Stefan.
Hi, thanks for having me again. I'm Stefan Vanningen, based in New York. I run content programming, strategy, and acquisition for Zumo, a fast, free ad-supported television platform, widely distributed globally, and recently acquired, I guess not so recently anymore, about 18 months ago, acquired by Comcast.
Yeah, it seems pretty recent though, doesn't it?
We all missed a year, right, Brian? So
I know the last 2 years have all blended together. Okay, so what we're going to do here is let's start sort of from the bottom up. I want to start with the tech stack and all the technology that comes into play, because at the end of the day, that is your toolkit. If you don't have the right things in place, you'll have a very static user experience. So Manish, what role does technology play in an enabler for a really good user experience?
Sure. So Brian, you spoke about the art and the science part of it, right? So if you talk about experience, it is expected to be more of an art, but to be honest, it is more of a science if you talk about the proportion. And to put it simply, how do I see it, Brian, is that what execution is to strategy is what I see technology is to experience design. So strategy is as good as the execution is, and the same thing holds for experience design. Somebody can have the best of design thought through with the user journey, having a very comprehensive and very thought through experience design envisaged. But until unless there is a technology understanding and implementation, that is of no use in a nutshell. So again, as I said, it's majorly a science. There is an aspect of art as well, but it's majorly a science, especially with technology being playing a role from the moment the content is ingested into the value chain. From there, ultimately up to the consumption on the device, it's all about technology. So it plays a very, very important role. And I think it is slightly not given enough due in terms of when we talk about experience design.
Okay, so we're going to go back to that sort of interplay between art and science in a minute, but I want to jump to Virginia. You know, from your perspective, if you look at the important elements, I call them the ingredients in the user experience, you know, what are they right now, and how have those expectations changed, maybe across demographics?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, it's always about transparency and control for the user. So transparency to allow the user to navigate massive libraries, give them the tools. I mean, I think that there is definitely a case for AI-driven lean back experiences, particularly for older demographics. And Stefan, you might have a different point of view on that. But I've seen in speaking with groups at libraries and other consumer and professional groups that there is really a divide, a demographic divide between people who want a more active role and those who want to sit back a little. Now, a lot of the people who prefer that more passive experience may not be, the core streamer audience. They're sticking with traditional.
Okay. So Andrew, I'm going to ask you to put on your artist hat, talk a little bit more about the art of the sort of the experience for the consumer. What are some of the elements there? Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about content. It's not just about a tech stack. It's really about building community, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, community means different things for different types of services. For example, a niche offering that may be focused on a smaller demographic, should probably have higher community elements. But when we think about community elements, it doesn't mean just chat on the window or on the player. In fact, that can be complicated, it can be expensive, and frankly, ruin the experience. But it can mean things like leveraging a hashtag on Twitter for a live stream with an admin support. Navigating that would probably help with discoverability. And then Facebook groups too is a great tool to leverage, a community built service that you can monitor and engage and listen to the audience. And I think those types of community elements, what's great is you're going to learn things about your audience that no reporting will ever show. And I think that's where we get into the art of this.
Okay. So where there's a lot to unpack there, but before we do that, I want to go to our content king here, Stefan. And you mentioned fast, and it's interesting. It's a big trend right now, kind of the passive lean back experience. And I think it speaks to a lot to maybe the user experience overload that consumers were dealing with in terms of having just so many options out there. What do you think is driving the fast opportunity, and what lessons can we learn to better improve our overall user experience?
So first, I think that from a content standpoint, when people are sitting down to watch even the news or an entertainment piece, a movie, a TV show, regardless of what you hear, people still want to watch that on the biggest screen in the house, right? And the biggest screen in the house has some limitations with its capability, with the simple remote of up, down, left, right, etc. And so I think where the fast platforms have exploded is utilizing that old sort of mentality of the user experience, just a simple up and down to change channels, but bringing, content to the biggest screen in the house for free, right? Mm-hmm. So it's sort of all those combinations. It's the simplicity of use. It's the largest screen in the house for your sort of entertainment and experience. And then it's the free portion of that sort of really has added this. And I think as people look at sort of their monthly bills, especially over COVID, and sort of how much consumption they're utilizing on traditional cable, perhaps that also sort of accelerates the use of these free platforms as better and better content comes to those experiences.
Yeah, it's funny because we had a session yesterday. We were talking about, interactive sports, esports, gambling, things like that. Sports in general, we'll be talking about today. And you want a big screen for that experience. And Andrew, you're smiling because isn't that the best way to generate community, right?
Yes, I mean, at home, then you're watching with people next to you, but especially for longer form content, look at Quibi, right? They went all in for the short form on the devices, and they learned very quickly they couldn't adjust when COVID hit that people would want to watch that at home on their TV apps. And by that time, it was too complicated to build the TV apps. That's an interesting one too, where I think no matter what the content is, people want the choice, but the longer the form the content, the more premium the content, the bigger the screen.
Okay. So, but there are many different screens, right? We live in a
Yes.
multi-screen world. We started watching, my wife and I started watching Squid Game, and she hated it, so by like the second episode, too much bloodshed, and I was banished, and I had to go on my laptop and then eventually on my phone. And so I guess, Mish, back to you, how do you maintain that, consistent user experience across devices? Those are those are pretty different tech stacks, let's say, but you want to still ensure some level of consistency across that experience. Maybe speak to that, please.
So absolutely, Brian, and as Stephen also mentioned, that the preference and the growing preference is that people want to watch more and more content on the big screen, and that is where this connected TV world is kind of exploding with number of devices. Now, again, as I said earlier as well, it's easy to think from a design perspective that what it should be like on a let's say a connected TV, like a smart TV or a gaming console. But one thing that we need to be aware of would be the limitation of the devices itself. We spoke about Stephen spoke about the remote thing, right? So the limitation on the device side, the limitation of the operating system, and something that is sometimes overlooked is also the restriction that will be there on the app store side, right? You might build the best of the apps, but the app size is something that a Roku app store or a Samsung app store won't allow for. So when we talk about connected TV devices, I think it is important to know the limitation of each device, and not only limitation, both limitation and opportunities with each of the device, their operating systems and all. And second piece is there are advancement happening in the technology like Renative, where we can build a cross-platform app having at least 80 to 90% common code base. And that is where some level of consistency in user experience comes into play, keeping aside the cost aspect and the ease of implementation aspect. The consistency comes into the play if we build something sort of a cross-platform app that has a somewhat common code base.
So it's interesting because we've seen this trend now where we have, content services launching their own smart TVs. Roku has famously built their Roku channel. It's worked really well for them. Comcast has announced, and we'll see those sort of platform wars going on for a while. And it's not just enough, I guess I'll go back to you, Stefan, to have a tile, and just have a tile sitting there on the home screen and what have you. You need to discover it. Once you're there, you need to understand the whole journey of content search and discovery. And maybe you can speak to best practices there for, content service providers.
Yeah. And I think you won't be surprised to hear me say this, but number one, it's about having the best available content, right? And what you're going to see, if we spin this forward to 2022, what you're going to see is sort of another content war amongst the ad-supported platforms for exclusive, unique, differentiated content, so that there's a reason to use that service over another service, and so that you're finding it. But to your point about discovery, that also becomes about user experience, marketing levers, and how you can promote the content that's there. For Zumo, we have over 200 channels, and we need to make sure that somebody that wants to find a cooking channel over a movie channel, over a news channel, can do so easily. And so there's a lot of time and effort on the product side to think about that content discovery and that user journey. And then it becomes about personalization, right? So if these are the last 5 channels you watched, you want to make sure that those are the last 5 channels that you're seeing when you come back the next time. If you are one to be an over consumer of news, you want to make sure those news channels are there, but there may be a secondary layer that most news users go to this channel next, right? And so making sure that that's all right there and not buried deep is sort of how we at Zumo are addressing, personalization and content.
Yep. And that's where you have to have good data about the consumer and match that to your content library as well. It's interesting, in our focus group yesterday with the Trender panel, we kind of explored this topic a little bit, and some of our trenders had particular genres they were interested in, and they didn't really care where it came from. What service, it didn't matter that much. They were definitely willing to pay more or sign up for a new service if it was one of the genres they were passionate about. But one of the frustrations, and Virginia will be happy to hear this, is universal search across all services. The ability to put in a title and know where it's being played, maybe what it costs, that kind of thing. I know you have a service like that. So I guess the challenge is, how do we drive consumer behavior? How do we partner with the different, content sort of services out there to improve that overall experience?
Yes, well, we definitely are trying to help people sort of contextualize what's available to them and sort of actively manage what their subscription mix looks like, both paid, free, all of it. So, and there are other services actually that help with universal search of particular titles or pieces of content. Yep. We don't actually do that as much, but all of these things work together to try to give users a more cohesive understanding of what's available. And, I would say also that I think we need to broaden our definition of user experience. It's not just about, the product and the features, which is hugely important, but it's really a 360-degree experience that takes place, when you're doing the commerce part and the subscription and activation part. And, there's subscription terms and pricing that is changing on the daily. These are all things that really resonate with consumers and make them very frustrated. And when people start taking a look at their mix of services and try to trim things back, these sort of experiences where they fall down, whether consciously or unconsciously, these are things that will stick with them when they try to decide who stays and who goes in the mix, and on an ongoing basis.
Okay, so there's that initial selection of a service, then there's a level below that, which is sort of title search and content management. Then there's the overall, again, and we'll go back to the art, and I'm going to ask Andrew to put her little French painter's cap on again here. So when you work with your clients, obviously building a video experience is different from other experiences, right? You've got, and I guess the question is, what's the best? We have more and more consumers moving off traditional sort of pay TV and going into the streaming world. How much of that experience should resonate with the rest of their digital universe, social media, just navigating websites? How much of it, we talked about fast channels, should look like a linear TV channel? Where's the balance?
Yeah, that's a good question. It depends on the content. It depends on the audience, the demographic, and the strategy. But, so the question is how to leverage this, how leverage social to complement.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think we were talking about community elements before. And so when we're talking about a niche audience or niche content offering, those community elements should be more intimate and like a VIP club level, where I feel like this is like my club and community, right? Where then a broader audience, maybe like a Zumo, community elements aren't about each other having the conversation in the audience. It's probably about them, Zumo having the opportunity to have that deeper connection and conversation with the audience themselves. So, there's creative ways to leverage social media with that. I think always, though, it takes automation is great and tools are great and technology is wonderful, but it takes that human element to make sure that those social strategies that you're leveraging or community conversations are really resonating with the audience, they're sticking and they feel authentic.
Yeah, so let's stick with social. To be honest, I've been shocked, not only last year, this year, how I've had to prompt panelists to talk about social, especially when we were talking about like content discovery recommendations in our focus group yesterday. I asked them, like, where did you find it? And I would say most of them found, more than 50% were pointing towards content they found through social recommendations. And Stefan, I'll go back to you. What are you guys doing to like integrate social recommendations, communities, all that stuff, navigation?
Yeah, I think it's been to be honest, it's been slow for us on that side, where we're focused on the platform and the TV experience, because getting people to sort of transition from a social call out to the Zumo app on a specific platform can sometimes be difficult. We do utilize it though, and I think as more and more people sort of enter this ecosystem, it becomes easier to sort of promote, right? So if I think about myself personally, I may be a casual soccer fan, and sort of scrolling through Instagram or something. If I see, oh, the U.S. men's team plays tonight, then I think, oh, I got to go find that, right? Then I got to go to Virginia's app to figure out where, when, how, what, right? But it does help prompt that viewing experience. And so utilizing it to promote exclusive content, to promote what's on tonight, to promote breaking news events is super important and definitely part of our marketing toolkit.
Yeah, it's interesting because you can look at social. Go ahead, Virginia. Sorry.
I was going to say, I think it's part of a good old-fashioned marketing mix, and really knowing when and where and how to speak to your audience to get them to be aware of it. And social is a huge part of that.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because you can look at, and we sort of picked up on this on the keynote with Emily from BritBox. Social is a marketing tool to draw new eyeballs, and, so it's part of your digital marketing mix. But it also can be something to build community, right? So if you want to capture major CPMs and engagement, you want to have fans that watch their favorite show and talk about it. And you want to have, they're doing it anyhow, right? My wife's watching Bachelor and she's on with her friend group and they're talking about the show, and that's done on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. I guess maybe we're pushing the envelope a little bit, but how do we integrate that to build fan engagement, viewer engagement? Andrew, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, I think it's great because, like Virginia was saying, it's good old-fashioned marketing strategy in a mix. And so I think you can blend those community elements together. Creating content that can be leveraged on social is so important too. So creating memes or little clips or highlights, favorite moments, like, repurposing what you have and getting creative behind the scenes is always great. That encourages people then to share their favorite content, or this, you got to watch the show now because this clip was so funny. It encourages that, rather than as an audience member, maybe it feels like a tweet maybe is a little daunting or too much, or I don't know what to say, where I see something I like, I'm going to retweet it, or I'm going to use that to share to my friend to say, you got to watch this show.
Yeah. I wanted, we got a good question here. I'm going to integrate it, not going to wait to the end here. So the question is about any of your teams working on AR, augmented reality, virtual reality components, and how do, I guess I would just ask the question, is that part of your strategy, and how do you look at that right now? And Stefan, we'll start with you.
Yeah, it hasn't really been on our roadmap right now. I think it's, again, going back to where the major consumption is.
Content, right?
Tough on TV.
Yeah.
But definitely something we have our eye on.
Yeah, it's interesting. In our esports conversation yesterday, we talked about entering the video game, and having an avatar. I'm like, wow, that's full engagement there. And then we talked about metaverses, which I really don't quite understand yet, but I guess Facebook will teach me over time. Manish, let's get back to the technology here. We're throwing a lot of things out: social, AR, from a technology perspective, what trends do you see? And, what's hype, where, one of your clients may come to you and say, hey, Manish, I really want to build this. And, and you're like, I'm not really sure that's worth the additional investment versus what do you really think has legs and has benefit for, your clients?
So, so Brian, if you talk about the history in terms of what has been on the priority list of the customers on the experience side, I
Yes.
think a lot has changed over the last few years. Like for example, if we talk about anything around video or the video playback, right, that has kind of become a hygiene now. Nobody comes and says that I'm worried about the buffering ratio, the time to first frame, and all those things. So that has become kind of a hygiene now. Nobody talks about it. One thing that has always been there on the radar of all the customers in the past 2 years and nowadays as well is the aspect that Stefan also mentioned is discovery. So if we talk from the experience perspective, the search, the personalization, and the recommendation, it still comes as the top three question from the customer, what you can do for me around that. So that's the first one. The second one, as Virginia and Andrea also touched base upon, is the whole 360-degree thing, like the content consumption piece, the discoverability and all that. Everybody understand that it has to be there. But the question now customer also have, and they will have unknowns as well. They'll talk about what more can be done. How can I engage my consumer more through those 360 channels, 360 channels? Now with social media advent, right, a lot of people are expressive and they want to share what they're watching, how they're feeling about it. And that is where those social media integration comes into the play. That is what customers are really excited and they are figuring out in terms of what is the right strategy there. Similarly to what Virginia was mentioning in terms of when to pitch them the right offer, when to pitch them the right content, what frequency the newsletter should go out, highlighting the new content additions and all. So it's an entire mix that customers are focusing on when they are doing the experience design journey with us. And just to summarize, Brian, what's happening is they're not talking about the usual stuff that we've been talking for a few years now. It is more around these themes that Virginia,
Mhm.
Andrea, and Stefan alluded to.
That's progress. It's funny that you mentioned that because I remember 5 years ago, and Stefan might have been in the room, we were discussing about how, all this content moving online was going to break the internet, and we've moved beyond that. You said playback and buffering and, start times and everything. And that's always a challenge. We always got to manage that. But I think to your point, Manish, we're moving beyond that. You mentioned discovery. Let's talk about data and recommendation engines a little bit. And Stefan, the challenge for you guys as a content service is matching the desires, the expectations of your audience, of your different audiences, really with the library of content. How do you? Is there any, I don't know, best practices to take customers on that journey? Any new technology or IP to that's helping?
We have what we call our Elixir engine that sort of is the secret sauce behind doing all this. We have additional challenges because we are a free service and we are a no signups, no subscription, no email entered, no barrier to entry, which is great from a user experience standpoint. Turn it on, watch something. But makes it tricky to feed the big data machine to sort of match all of that stuff. And obviously we take privacy very seriously and all of the rules and regulations around that. But we do have an entire division sort of and this product that we call Elixir that helps power the recommendations, the personalization, floating of channels to the top. And then there is still an editorial marketing piece that helps that, right? And I think everybody wants to really dive deep into the science of it, and that's really super important. But there is still this art that if you're showing holiday movies during the holidays, people will go find it. If you have a holiday hub, which is live now on Zumo, people know, oh, this is where I'm going to find my romantic Christmas comedy.
So you can't leave it up to the robots altogether. I mean, AI has its limits. There are times, and we've had this conversation, this has been a thread the last couple of days, where you want to be, brought to somewhere else, right? And you don't want your past behavior to dictate future recommendations. You want to explore. Maybe it's, maybe there's some profile management where you can change your mood, depending on time of day or time of week or whatever. You can add that to your Elixir engine. Just give me the patent idea there. Virginia, you're chomping at the bit.
I think that there's one more thing that bears mentioning that sometimes gets forgotten in terms of user experience, and that's certain navigation items that are basically should be table stakes at this point, but often are not in many of major apps. Organization of seasons, organization of trailers and the like. I mean, these are all very disparate, very confusing for consumers. It's a big cognitive load on trying to figure each app out. I mean, I would say that, for better or for worse, Netflix has set the bar on a lot of these schematics. And instead of trying to recreate the wheel, I don't know that that's a great use of resources for these other apps who are trying to do their own thing, whereas it's really more confusing than helpful.
Yeah, I'll give you one example. And again, this came from our Trender panel yesterday, is voice. And I know I have it now, I have Xfinity, and I haven't really used it that much, to be honest. My kids love it. So that's one interface that's changing the user experience. Is that the future? Does that serve its purpose? Is it, not quite there yet? Anybody have an opinion there? Voice remotes, Siri, she sends text sometimes that, I don't necessarily approve, but maybe I have an accent. So I don't know, that's interesting. That's a lot of people look at those sort of natural language or more natural approaches, gestures, are those, things that are, overhyped, or is this the future? Some more natural interfaces to content.
I mean, I think that these are definitely in the future. They're not where they need to be yet. But I think it just goes under that whole umbrella of, trying to build some consistency across the different services and not trying to be, I mean, even stuff like, rewinding and fast forwarding on some apps that have been around for a long time and are major, it's painful. And, I just think that we have not completely solved for these sort of housekeeping issues that should, even though we've made tremendous progress, those things need to be right.
Okay. Stefan, you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, I actually think just watching my own children navigate apps and platforms, that voice is going to become table stakes, stakes at this point.
So it's not a toy, it's a real thing.
Absolutely. I think there's no, I can tell a personal story of being on vacation and trying to find a specific movie and scrolling left and scrolling right, and opening different SVOD apps. And then my 16-year-old son at the time said, "You are an idiot," and took the remote, pressed the voice search, and then popped up all of the things we were trying to find, right? So I think, whether we like it or not, voice is easy. Now, it does need to be integrated into that universal search. It needs to have the metadata behind it, right? It needs to have the science behind it to make sure that everything is categorized, cataloged, and can appear. But at this point, voice is what's, table stakes in terms of content discovery.
And it's a way to learn, what consumers want. It was interesting in the keynote with Bryn Lev, your colleague at Comcast yesterday. She mentioned that they really curated a whole sort of package catalog of content because so many people are using the voice to say free content. And that it didn't just mean, they didn't have to pay extra for it, or was included in their subscription or their Netflix that came with Comcast, whatever. It meant something else. There was a psychological journey they were going on. And there was a curation opportunity, there's a programming opportunity there to match the desired content with what the customer is looking for. You're all shaking your head. So who wants to jump on that one? Anybody want to comment? Andrea?
I was just nodding. I love the word curation, right? With discoverability, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves in the industry to leverage AI and technology and perfect this this complicated art, I guess. When in reality, as a programmer, I'm sure Stefan can appreciate this, you're a curator, right? And so to constantly curate lists, listen to the audience, understand the timing of the year, relevant events that are going on, actors that may be going viral that week, you know, curation is so key to any strategy for discoverability. And I know I appreciate the services that I subscribe to when they're curating lists and pushing out messages on social or marketing newsletters so that it kind of eases that discoverability. I don't have to necessarily do it within the app, which can be annoying and complicated, right?
Mm-hmm. We have another question here there about fast channels. I'm going to skip that part, but just another example of something that maybe at the edge, picture in picture. Is that something that's important? Is that kind of old news? Anyone want to mention that?
I was just on a, oh, go ahead.
No,
Manish,
go ahead.
I'm curious. I know it's very complicated stuff, but I was just on my flight in on Alaska Airlines, and I was able to watch a movie and go on Twitter, and it was really enjoyable in that specific experience for that type of content. And I appreciate, I was very impressed that the airlines were using picture in picture.
So Virginia, you had mentioned, or you had talked a little bit about the partnership between the platform and the content. And before we get into that, one thing that jumps to mind is how much investment goes into the screen, the navigation of it, searching menus or fast channels or whatever, and potentially how little goes into the remote control, you know, and sometimes they're too simple. Sometimes they have way too many buttons on them and they're too complex. Manish, maybe you can talk to that a little bit, like the input devices. Are we making the right investments as an industry to get that right?
No, Brian, in my personal opinion, I think that is having a less of a focus. And somebody might argue, like, if you see the remotes that has been with all the devices, right, that has changed significantly in the last 3-4 years. But still, they have not solved for it because, as you rightly said, a little investment and focus is probably going there. The main focus is how do we solve the app part of it. But as Virginia was also mentioning earlier, that it has to be looked like completely together in terms of whatever touch points we have with the customer and where the improvements are needed. So in summary, yes, I think a lot needs to be done, but the focus mostly is to deal with those constraints and get to the experience that is possible within those constraints rather than solving for those constraints.
Yeah.
Because of
How
the
about just on the input device there, you know, apps on your phone, you know, as a way to, you know, control your content. I mean, obviously we're doing that anyhow when we're watching content on our phone. Our analyst yesterday, I forget what percentage of the time people are actually using a small screen, like their mobile phone, to watch content, but they're comfortable with that. You know, how about that to control the big screen TV? I know, Stefan, if you have any data or insights there, I know that some services kind of offer that and promote it. Others, I mean, is that, you know, again, is that a toy or is that a real beneficial thing for consumers?
I think there's a beneficial, that it is beneficial, right? There are a couple different ways in that we're using that sort of second screen. One is sort of retargeting and advertising, right? Hey, you're a Zumo user and you're on your mobile device, and did you know that this live event is happening right now on channel XYZ, right? So there's the sort of discovery piece that plays out in the second screen. There is the casting ability, starting something on your phone, realizing, hey, I really want to watch this. I want to watch it, to our
good example.
discussion point on the biggest screen. So casting. And then on the remote side, obviously we're not doing that much on that side because we're not the hardware. But you know, there are sort of the applicable Apple remote that you can get on your phone. I would sort of counter this conversation and say, do we really need to improve that? Is it the simplicity that drives the engagement and the usage and keeps people motivated to discover stuff? Or if we're going to sort of create an app where now you can program in your favorite channel and you can, you know, have all the functionality here that you would expect out of sort of software technology and rule-based stuff, does it overcomplicate the experience of a big screen? And do we actually need it? I don't know the answer to that. To me, I think what has perpetuated the acceleration of fast channels, of linear channels, and back to linear channels in general in the digital space has been the simplicity of it. So to go back and sort of re-engineer hardware to make it more complicated may not make sense. But I don't know.
Okay.
I'll just throw that out.
That's a good answer. And it's always a balance between, you don't want to, make things more complicated, right? And offer something too sophisticated where, again, it slows you down from getting to the content that you want.
It depends on who your audience is. It depends on who your target is. So, I would also say that I think voice is getting all the love these days and all the focus. And so I think you make a good point, Brian, that the remote and using your mobile device to control your at least your big screen experience has not been necessarily getting as much focus as it could. I think all of these things are necessary, and you need to meet your consumer where they are and where they want to be. And one day they might be more inclined to use their phone to navigate with a more flexible input system than a remote.
Okay, we have time for one final question, and I'll propose it to all of you. And it's simply this: what's going to be the major trend in the future when it comes to user experience? And can you give an example of that? And will it be evolutionary, meaning kind of incrementally improving on things we just talked about here, or potentially revolutionary? And then, the burden's on you to tell me what that revolution might be. So we're going to start in reverse order on my screen, and that's Stefan. You get the first word.
All right. I'm gonna focus my answer to the user experience of content, as you might expect I would. I do think it's a little bit of what I said earlier, which is the platforms, and you've seen it with Netflix, you've seen it with Apple TV, you've seen it with all the major SVODs. But as you get down to the free space and sort of mass market space, the content itself is going to start to become differentiated, whether it's originals on these ad-supported platforms or just exclusive windows. And then the sort of evolutionary piece of it will be how you're personalizing that and how you're attaching that to user bases and driving audiences, whether it's niche audiences for specific types of content or mass audiences for sort of the wider content plays. I do think that's evolutionary because it all depends on privacy. It depends on the ability to attach users to the content, and I don't think there's a big revolution in that, and everybody's working on it now. The SVODs with subscription can clearly do that today.
Okay, so incremental improvements, we kind of know what the challenge is, but we've got some work to do. Okay, Virginia, real quick.
I think that we've only seen the tip of the iceberg on people churning in and out of apps. I think that people are slowly realizing the power that they have. And when they do, there's going to be more of an explosion of churn. It's something that the streaming services will need to deal with. And, all of these UX things that we've been talking about will play into these decisions for consumers.
Okay, good answer. Manish.
So two dimensions, Brian. One is evolutionary, and that is what I agree with what Stefan also said. We have been seeing discovery, personalization, recommendation evolving in the last few years, and I think that will continue to happen because that, in my opinion, is still the top priority and the most important thing for all the OTT platforms. But moving on to the revolutionary thing, I think eventually two things are going to drive OTT experience. One, definitely, I believe voice is going to be very, very strong player eventually in the OTT, because that is where I'll stop navigating on my mobile phone or typing and searching and all. So all will be driven by voice. That will make me spend more time on the watching content rather than searching for it. So that's voice is one. And second, I see some sort of a blurring happening between the content side of it, the gaming side of it, and the social media side of it. How does these three comes together and be the eventual? It is not going to be the only content consumption app. That is what I believe, but that is going to happen in a longer term and
Awesome.
really one.
Yeah, awesome. Good answer. Okay, Andrew, you get last word real quick.
Yeah, I loved what Virginia said, that people are slowly realizing the power that they have. I think that's happening across the entire economy. And so I think that these, at least the major ones for sure, are going to have to get more competitive and lean into things like a Rundle strategy, right? Mixing retail with subscription, exclusivity, Disney Plus. If you buy an annual pass, maybe you get a day pass at the park. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I hope we're going to see a lot more of that so that there's more incentives to choose who you're supporting with your dollars.
Mhm. Awesome, great answers. Thank you, panel. Fantastic job. A lot of work to do here, but we're making improvements, and some of them will be leaps and bounds. So, show of applause, digital hands up for our attendees. Let's see. There we go. Put those hands right up. Thank them for their great insights.